Spider-Man, Spider-Man does whatever a Spider-Pig does. And yeah, I really fucked that one up, didn't I? Got my Spider-Man shirt on. Just watched The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Let's get to reviewing now. Welcome to another edition of Worth a Watch with me, Anthony Flotis. What can I say about this movie? Got my notes right here. This is going to be the non-spoiler part of this review. This is a jumbled clusterfuck of a mess that I don't know where to go with this review because it's so convolutedly fucked that Sony, good job. People think that Sony fucked up Spider-Man 3 as well as the writers and whatever. This is worse in terms of badness for me, in my humblest of opinions, because there was legit potential here. There was a lot of good storylines that could have meshed so well, like fitting like gloves, and no, Sony had to just shove everything in there, and god dang it, man. It's a jumbled mess of a film with the exception of Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone's chemistry. It's all good stuff, you know. It's really good to see them on screen. They have legit chemistry. It's a lot of fun to see Spider-Man using a lot of good one-liners, very similar to the comic books. That and Jamie Foxx and Dane Dehaan and Sally Field, they were all fairly decent in their roles as Electro, Aunt May, and Harry Osborn, respectively. With the script that was given to them, they actually did fairly decently. And with some decent action, it's an okay, fun summer flick. As a fan of Spider-Man myself, I still prefer the Raimi films. Since day one, I will just say this to briefly wrap up this portion of the review. Since day one, I knew that this was nothing more than a cash grab. People say it's not, but I say that's bullshit. It's been nothing more than a cash grab. In my humblest of opinions, I just don't feel anything for any of these people, with the exception of Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy. That's about it. I don't give a shit about anything else that's going on in these now last two films. And the Raimi films have their flaws. Oh yeah, they really do. But I only recommend it if you're really just wanting to see what's what, and if you really enjoy Spider-Man, you'll get your fix somewhat. But at the same time, if you know the comic books, you're going to be ultimately even more perplexed and loving and hating this movie because there's so much right, but there is so much convoluted wrong in this movie. Yeah, and right off, I'll admit here, and continuing on with spoilers now, so feel free to go check out the movie first, then you can watch the rest of this review. I'm not a comic guy, but I do know the general gist of what goes on within the storyline of Gwen Stacy's death, which, yes, it happens. We all guessed it, and while it was emotionally impactful for me because I simply saw it as Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker on screen because of the great talent from Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, they brought those characters to life, and they did it well, and that's the only reason why I even felt an ounce of pulling of the heartstrings and just making you just go, oh, this is hard to watch. But how it unfolded, and it felt like it was just so rushed and shoved in there. It felt nothing more than like a plot device, as in the looking at the movie as a whole. And let me just say this, too many fucking subplots. Anything from Peter's parents, which should have been fucking answered in the first film. I thought that was such a cop-out. I hated the first film, by the way. Looking back at it. Peter and Gwen's love life. The reintroduction of Harry Osborn, who's been absent for 10 years for some fucking reason. And then also him and his father and the bitter controversies that happened between that and Oscorp, the company. Max Dillon / Electro's origin. Aunt May's job conundrums. Peter being haunted by the memory of Gwen Stacy's father because he died in the first film. Mary Jane's recital. Peter being behind on his bills. Dr. Octopus being... Oh shit, wait. Sorry, this is attempted humor. Oh, fuck that. Yeah, that didn't happen in this movie, obviously. But it might as well have. God, there was so much shit in this. I can't... It's too much. It's just too much of a again, people bitch about too many villains and too many things going on in Spider-Man 3. This is hands down worse of a bigger worse of a situation than the Spider-Man 3 had. There is way too much for me to cover in one review. It would take hours to really want to dissect and poke at the details of this movie. But I'm not that big a fan of this rebooted Spider-Man. I will just say this. The good that I did write down, thinking back, as I said, Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone, superb chemistry as the characters. Sally Field does what she can. Dane Dehaan does what he can. And Jamie Foxx, you know, as Electro, I thought he did have a sinister quality as well as when he was the nerdy character. I think he did fairly decently, pulling off both. The climax, as I said, the only reason I gave a shit was because the chemistry was so good when Gwen Stacy did die due to Spider-Man's just being a second too late. And that's very similar to the comics. But at the same time, Norman Osborn was the one who should have done that, not Harry, because Harry was the one who did that in this film. So that bothered me because I knew that. And but even then I have something to nitpick. I hate to be such a nitpicky fanboy type reviewer with this, but I love Spider-Man. I grew up with Spider-Man. I grew up with Batman. Both characters are so near and dear to my heart. And when I see them just so blandly put on the screen with a bland movie, fucked up beyond belief convolution, at least Spider-Man 3 had, yes, it was the same movie so many times over, but at least it was done Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. This is just, there's too much to nitpick. This is too much. I really don't know what else to say other than there needed, less is more. This is quite the opposite of that. Whether it was Sony or the writers, whoever it was, Mark Webb did a decent job directing the action and the romance especially. Aside from that, I just didn't care for a lot of the characters. I thought the Green Goblin thing was rushed with Harry, and I thought the Rhino situation with Paul Giamatti for the 5 fucking minutes he was on screen, I thought that was okay, but still, it just didn't make a lot of sense. And there's so much, and the bit I've given away here in this spoiler section, that's all I can really say. It's too much for me to really moan and groan about because I'm going to get redundant. So I will just say this. Bottom line, it's a fairly decently acted comic book movie. It could have been so much better if it was more focused, cutting a bunch of shit out, mainly a lot of the parents of Peter Parker stuff, and maybe even one of the particular villains altogether, maybe Paul Giamatti stuff. But no, Sony wants that Sinister Six movie, so yay. God, there's just so much stuff. I really don't know what else to say other than I give this movie a 6.5 out of 10. It wasn't the worst movie in the world, but my God, it was very disappointing. If it was more focused, would have been awesome. But there are bits and pieces where I really loved, and I thought again, Gwen Stacy's death did hit a little bit right here, and it hurt to watch. And the action was fairly decent with Electro. I really thought there was a lot of cool Electro-oriented scenes, him being pure electricity and stuff. Good stuff right there. And the writing, of course, was abysmal, but because it's so convoluted. But Mark Webb did what he could, and yeah, it's an okay-ish movie. See it if you are truly a die-hard Spider-Man fan. Aside from that, though, you still may walk away kind of 50-50. So that's my very convoluted review of Amazing Spider-Man 2. Feel free to comment below on what are your thoughts on this little convoluted mess of a movie. And thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. I'm Anthony Flotis with Worth Watch, and keep going to the movies.